The crack in the wooden wall was barely 3 inches wide, but it was enough to watch my 12-year marriage die in the flickering light of a kerosene lamp. Rain hammered against my back, soaking through my white linen shirt until it clung to my skin like a second layer. The fabric that had seemed so appropriate for a Caribbean vacation now felt like a shroud. I stood there in the mud, water streaming down my face, and watched my wife wrap herself around a man I'd never seen before, a local fisherman with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands that moved across her body with the familiarity of long practice. But here's the thing that might surprise you. I wasn't surprised. I'd been waiting for this moment for 7 weeks. 49 days of careful documentation, quiet investigation, and the kind of cold patience that comes from spending 15 years catching liars for a living. I'm a forensic accountant. I trace money. I find fraud. I expose the people who think they're smarter than everyone else. My wife Jessica thought she was smarter than me. She was wrong. I raised my phone, angled it toward the crack, and hit record. My hands were steady. My heart was ice. "Gotcha," I whispered. The word hung in the humid air, swallowed by thunder and the relentless percussion of rain on palm fronds. I watched for another 30 seconds, just to be thorough, just to make sure there was no innocent explanation for what I was seeing. Then pocketed my phone and stepped back into the shadows. 12 years. A daughter. A home. A life built on what I thought was solid ground. All of it. A lie. Let me take you back 7 weeks, to the moment everything started to unravel. It was a Tuesday evening in Tampa, the kind of humid night where the air feels like warm soup and the mosquitoes treat you like an all-you-can-eat buffet. I was in our bedroom, 4,000 square feet of Mediterranean-style excess in the Harbor Island neighborhood, looking for my earbuds in Jessica's gym bag. What I found instead was a phone I'd never seen before. It was a cheap prepaid model, the kind you buy at a gas station when you don't want anyone tracking your calls. I turned it over in my hands, my forensic accountant brain already cataloging details. The worn edges suggested regular use. The smudge pattern on the screen indicated a 4-digit PIN entered frequently, and the fact that my wife of 12 years had hidden it in a side pocket of her gym bag told me everything I needed to know. My first instinct was to confront her immediately. Storm into whatever room she was in, wave the phone in her face, demand answers. That's what most people would do. That's what a normal husband would do. But I'm not normal. I catch liars for a living. And I know that the moment you tip your hand, the game is over. The guilty party destroys evidence, constructs alibis, gets their story straight. By the time you actually get to the truth, it's been sanitized beyond recognition. So instead, I memorized the phone's IMEI number, placed it back exactly where I'd found it, and walked out of the bedroom like nothing had happened. Jessica was in the kitchen, making herself a protein shake. "Find your earbuds?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah, they were in my laptop bag." My voice didn't waver. "Going for a run." "In this heat?" "Training for that 5K next month, remember?" She made a non-committal sound. Her attention was already elsewhere, probably counting the minutes until she could check that hidden phone again. I ran 5 miles that night, pounding out my anger on the pavement, and by the time I got home, I'd made a decision. I was going to investigate my own wife the way I'd investigate a suspect. "I've been thinking," Jessica said over dinner the following week. She'd made my favorite, grilled salmon with asparagus, which should have been my second red flag. My wife hadn't cooked a real meal in months. "We should take a trip, just the two of us, reconnect." I looked up from my plate, studying her face. Jessica was still beautiful at 36, auburn hair, green eyes, the kind of bone structure that photographed well for her law firm's website. But there was something different about her lately. A restlessness. An energy that had nothing to do with me. "What did you have in mind?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "There's this island I read about. Isla Vela. It's in the Caribbean, really remote. Limited cell service, no big resorts, just peace. She smiled, and to anyone else it would have looked genuine. I think we need that, Derek, don't you? Sounds romantic, I said. Spontaneous. Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. When's the last time we did something spontaneous? I pretended to think about it. Our anniversary trip to Key West? 3 years ago? Exactly, 3 years. We've been so focused on work, on Lily's schedule, on everything else. We've forgotten about us. There it was. The manipulation disguised as romance. The calculated move presented as impulse. When were you thinking? Next month? I already looked at some resorts, just casually, And there's this place called the Palomar that gets great reviews. Small, intimate, mostly locals. Perfect for reconnecting. Already looked at resorts. Already picked one out. So much for spontaneous. But here's the thing about Jessica. She'd never been spontaneous a day in her life. She was a real estate attorney who scheduled her bathroom breaks. The woman had a color-coded calendar for our daughter's extracurricular activities. So when she pitched this spontaneous trip, I knew she'd been planning it for a while. The question was why. I found out 3 days later, after running the burner phone's IME through some databases I had access to through work. The phone had been purchased with a prepaid card at a convenience store in Miami 3 months earlier. I pulled traffic camera footage from that day and watched my wife walk out of the store, tucking the phone into her purse. My hands were shaking when I closed that video file. Not from sadness. From the cold clarity of confirmation. Then I installed a GPS tracker on her car. It's legal in Florida for marital vehicles. I checked 3 times and started documenting her movements. Every Thursday, Jessica told me she had client meetings in Miami. Every Thursday, her car went to the same address. A marina on the Miami River. I drove down there myself one Saturday, told her I was golfing with colleagues. The marina was small, mostly commercial fishing boats and a few pleasure craft. I walked the docks until I found what I was looking for. A weathered blue trawler named La Esperanza, registered to a man named Rafael Vega. I took photos. I ran his name. Rafael Vega, 42, commercial fisherman, originally from the Dominican Republic, now splitting his time between Miami and, wouldn't you know it, a small island called Isla Vela. My wife hadn't found a random vacation spot. She'd been planning a reunion with her lover. Dad? I looked up from my laptop. Lily stood in the doorway of my home office, her 11-year-old face pinched with worry. She had my eyes but her mother's hair, and lately she'd been watching both of us like we were bombs that might detonate. Hey, sweetheart. What's up? Is everything okay with you and Mom? I closed my laptop, gave her my full attention. Why do you ask? Lily shrugged, but her eyes were too old for her face. She's always on her phone, and you're always in here, and at dinner nobody talks anymore. I pulled her into a hug, breathed in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated stuff going on, I said carefully. But you know what's not complicated? How much I love you. That's never going to change, no matter what. Promise? Promise. She nodded against my chest, and I held her a little tighter, already calculating how to protect her from what was coming. The next step was following the money. Jessica and I had always maintained separate accounts alongside our joint finances. Her idea, actually, back when we were newlyweds, and she was fresh out of law school with ideas about independence. At the time, I'd found it charming. Now I was grateful for the paper trail. I spent 3 nights going through 18 months of bank statements, credit card receipts, and financial records. Jessica was careful. I'll give her that. The amounts were never large enough to trigger automatic alerts. 500 here, 800 there, always with plausible explanations like spa day or continuing education fees. But I'm a forensic accountant. Finding hidden money is literally what I do. Total transfers to an account I'd never known existed. $47,000. I sat back in my chair and let that number sink in. $47,000 my wife had stolen from our family over a year and a half. Enough for a down payment on a property. Enough to build a new life. Enough to prove intent. I pulled out our prenuptial agreement. Jessica had helped draft it, which now seemed like cosmic irony, and reread the infidelity clause. In the event of proven adultery, the wronged party was entitled to 70% of marital assets, and the unfaithful spouse forfeited any claim to spousal support. Jessica had written her own financial death sentence. You want me to be honest with you? Brian Hartwell leaned back in his chair, his divorce attorney's office overlooking Clearwater Beach like a monument to other people's broken marriages. We'd been roommates at UF, back when neither of us knew what the future held. Now he was one of the best family lawyers in the Tampa Bay area. That's why I'm here. Florida's a no-fault state. Adultery doesn't automatically affect divorce proceedings. Judges don't care who slept with who. But with the prenup, you'll destroy her financially. Brian's eyes were serious. If you can prove it. That's the key, Derek. Not suspicion, not probability. Proof. I'm working on it. How much do you have? I handed him a folder. He flipped through it, his eyebrows climbing higher with each page. GPS records, bank statements, the IMEI trace on the burner phone, a photo of Rafael Vega's boat. This is thorough, he said slowly. It's what I do. But it's circumstantial. Any half-decent attorney could argue the GPS tracker was calibrated wrong. The bank transfers were for legitimate expenses you weren't aware of. The phone could belong to anyone. I need more. You need definitive proof of the affair. Photos, video, witness testimony, something that removes all doubt. He closed the folder, set it on his desk. You're my friend, Derek, so I'm going to be straight with you. Most guys in your position, they confront their wives, make a scene, and end up splitting everything 50-50 because they can't prove anything. Don't be that guy. I'm not planning to be. What are you planning? She wants to take a trip to an island where her boyfriend lives. Brian's face went carefully blank. That's convenient. Isn't it? Derek. He leaned forward, his attorney persona slipping for a moment into genuine concern. What exactly are you planning? I'm planning to go on vacation with my wife, and I'm planning to come back with everything I need. He studied me for a long moment. Be careful. These situations can escalate in ways you don't expect. If this guy feels cornered, I know. Do you? Because I've seen domestic situations turn violent. I know, Brian. I met his eyes. That's why I'm being careful. That's why I'm doing this the right way. He nodded slowly. Okay, keep me posted. And Derek? Yeah? Don't do anything that gives her ammunition. No matter how angry you get, no matter what you see, stay in control. The second you lose your temper, you lose the case. Understood. The week before our trip, I cracked Jessica's burner phone. It wasn't as hard as you might think. I was sitting across from her at a restaurant, a date night she'd suggested to keep up appearances, when she excused herself to use the restroom. She left the burner in her purse, and her purse was on the chair next to mine. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. See, there was a mirror on the wall behind our table, angled just enough that I could watch her enter her PIN when she'd checked it earlier. 4 digits, entered casually, the way you do when you've done something 1,000 times. 0723, July 23rd. Rafael Vega's birthday, I later learned. The next time Jessica showered, I went through that phone like it was a crime scene. What I found made my stomach turn. 2 years. They'd been together for 2 years. The messages started professional. Jessica had handled some licensing issues for Raphael's fishing business, then turned flirtatious, then explicit, then something worse, emotional. They talked about their days, their dreams, their future, and they talked about me. Counting down the days until I don't have to pretend anymore, Jessica had written. Soon, mi amor. Soon, you'll be free. Free. Like I was a prison sentence she was serving. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was a thread from 3 months back discussing my life insurance policy. $2 million, with Jessica as the primary beneficiary. What if something happened to him on the island? Jessica had written. The currents there are dangerous. People disappear all the time. Raphael's response was a string of laughing emojis and, "You're terrible, mi amor." Just dark humor between lovers. Probably. But probably isn't good enough when your wife is joking about your death with her boyfriend. So I made some changes. I visited an estate attorney without telling Jessica and rewrote my will. If anything happened to me, everything went into a trust for Lily, managed by my brother Tyler. Jessica got nothing. Then I called my insurance company and had a quiet conversation with their fraud division. Hypothetically, I said to a colleague I'd worked with on several cases, if a beneficiary was making comments about the policyholder having an accident, would that trigger an investigation? Hypothetically? She laughed without humor. That would trigger an investigation, a suspicious death review, and probably an FBI referral. Why do you ask? Just curious. I wasn't just curious. I was building redundancies. If something happened to me on that island, I wanted Jessica to spend the rest of her life explaining those text messages to investigators. 3 days before we left for Isla Vela, I found the real estate documents. Jessica was at a conference. I knew from her GPS that she was actually at the Miami Marina again, so I took the opportunity to search her home office. Behind a row of law textbooks that I'm pretty sure she'd never actually read, I found a folder labeled Villa Properties. Inside were brochures for beachfront land on Isla Vela, a draft purchase agreement, and 2 names on the buyer line, Jessica Lawson and Rafael Vega. They weren't just having an affair, they were building a life together. With my money. I photographed every page, replaced the folder exactly where I'd found it, and sat down on her office chair to think. $47,000 explained now. Down payment on their Caribbean dream home. Probably planning to divorce me, take half of everything, and ride off into the sunset with her fishermen. Or maybe, that little voice in my head whispered, maybe the plan was simpler. A tragic accident. A grieving widow. $2 million in insurance money. Either way, I was done being passive. I called my sister Megan in Atlanta. She produces a true crime podcast that gets about 2 million downloads per episode, and she has a mind like a steel trap for evidence and narrative. I need your help, I said when she answered. What's wrong? You sound weird. Jessica's cheating on me. Has been for 2 years. I have proof. And I think... I hesitated. I think she might be planning something worse. The line went silent for a long moment. Tell me everything, Megan said. So I did. It took 45 minutes to lay out the whole story. The burner phone, the GPS records, the Miami trips, Rafael Vega, the island vacation, the text messages about insurance policies. Megan listened without interrupting, and I could picture her taking notes the way she does for her episodes. When I finished, she was quiet for another long moment. Derek, she said finally. This is bad. I know. No, I mean, this is really bad. The insurance thing? That's not just affair territory, that's... I know what it is. Have you talked to anyone else, besides Brian? No, I don't want this getting out until I'm ready. Good, keep it that way. She paused. Listen, I've been doing this podcast for 5 years. I've talked to dozens of prosecutors, detectives, forensic experts. You know what they all say is the biggest mistake people make? What? They assume they're the smartest person in the room. They get confident, they get sloppy, and they miss something crucial. Her voice was serious in a way I rarely heard from my little sister. You're smart, Derek, but Jessica's smart too, and she's been planning this a lot longer than you've been investigating it. Don't underestimate her. I won't. Think of yourself as the prosecutor, Megan advised. Document everything. Timestamps, locations, corroborating evidence. Assume you're building a case for my show, except the case is real and the stakes are your life. That's morbid. Derek, your wife joked about you dying. That's morbid. I'm just being practical. She had a point. What else should I do? Physical preparation. You're walking into her territory. She picked this island. She knows the boyfriend. She has home field advantage. You need to be ready for anything. You think it'll get physical? I think you need to be prepared for everything. Hire a trainer. Take a self-defense class. Get your head in the game. She paused. And Derek? Yeah? Call me every day from that island. Check in. If I don't hear from you for 24 hours, I'm calling the police, the FBI, and every news outlet I can think of. Megan, I'm serious. I've read too many stories about people who thought they were safe until they weren't. You're my brother. I'm not losing you to some two-timing lawyer and her fisherman boyfriend. Something tight in my chest loosened a little. Okay, I'll check in. Promise me. I promise. Think of yourself as the prosecutor, Megan advised after I'd laid out the whole story. Document everything. Timestamps, locations, corroborating evidence. Assume you're building a case for my show, except the case is real and the stakes are your life. That's morbid. Derek, your wife joked about you dying. That's morbid. I'm just being practical. She had a point. What else should I do? Physical preparation. You're walking into her territory. She picked this island. She knows the boyfriend. She has home field advantage. You need to be ready for anything. I'd already started working out harder, claiming vacation body goals, when Jessica asked. Now I signed up for a self-defense refresher course, team building at work, I told her, and spent my lunch breaks learning how to handle myself if things went sideways. I also created encrypted backups of every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Screenshots of text messages, bank records, GPS logs, the property documents, everything. One copy in a safety deposit box. One with Brian Hartwell. One in a secure cloud drive with instructions to release to law enforcement if I didn't check in within 72 hours. Paranoid? Maybe. But paranoid people live longer. The flight to Isla Vela was surreal. Jessica was practically vibrating with excitement, which she disguised as vacation enthusiasm. She held my hand during takeoff, rested her head on my shoulder, laughed at my jokes like she hadn't done in years. I played along, mirroring her energy, pretending I didn't know every smile was a lie. I'm so glad we're doing this, she said, as we transferred to the ferry that would take us to the island. I feel like we've been disconnected for so long. Me too, I said, and it wasn't even a lie. We had been disconnected because she'd been connecting with someone else. The Palomar Resort was exactly as advertised. Mid-range, colonial architecture, 40 rooms, mostly empty because rainy season had scared off the tourists. We were one of 6 couples staying. The staff greeted us with rum punches and warm towels, and for a moment I almost forgot why I was there. Then I saw the harbor. Our ocean view suite had a balcony overlooking the fishing boats, and I watched Jessica's eyes scan the water below. She wasn't looking at the sunset, or the pelicans, or the quaint village clustered along the shoreline. She was looking for a weathered blue trawler named La Esperanza. I spotted it before she did, anchored near the far dock. My heart rate didn't change. I'd known it would be there. Beautiful view, I said mildly. Jessica barely heard me. I think I'll take a bath before dinner. Long travel day. Take your time. She disappeared into the bathroom and I heard the water start. Then I heard something else, the distinctive buzz of a cheap prepaid phone. I moved quietly to her purse, slipped the burner out just enough to read the screen. "You're here. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. The usual place. Can't wait to hold you." Jessica's reply came through as I watched. "Tomorrow. I'll make an excuse. I've missed you so much." I photographed the exchange through the crack in the bathroom door, angled my phone so the screen captured clearly. Then I put everything back exactly where it was and stepped onto the balcony. The sunset was gorgeous. Oranges and pinks bleeding into purple, the water catching fire with reflected light. A perfect romantic evening. I wondered if Raphael was watching the same sunset from his boat. Carlos Medina was the head of security at the Palomar, a former Miami-Dade police officer who'd retired to the island for the quiet life. I met him at the bar that first night while Jessica was freshening up for 20 minutes, texting Raphael, I assumed. "Forensic accounting," he repeated when I explained what I did. "So you catch people who steal money?" "Essentially. Follow the paper trail, find the fraud." "Interesting work." I did financial crimes for a few years before switching to homicide. He sipped his beer. "You here for business or pleasure?" "Vacation, supposedly." I let the word hang. "Can I ask you something? You know the local fishermen pretty well?" "Most of them. Small island." "You know a guy named Rafael Vega? Runs a boat called La Esperanza?" Carlos's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Cop instincts, even in retirement. "I know of him. Why?" "Just heard the name around. Thought I might charter a fishing trip." "I'd look elsewhere." Carlos set his beer down. "Vega's not reliable." "How so?" He seemed to weigh something, then leaned closer. "His last girlfriend disappeared about 3 years ago. Police never found her. Everyone assumes she went back to the mainland, but..." He shrugged. "Island gossip, maybe, but I keep my distance." I let that information settle into my bones. "Appreciate the heads up. You got a local number, in case you need anything?" I gave him my cell. He entered his own number and handed my phone back. "I'm here most nights if you want to talk. Something tells me you might." Retired cop. Definitely still had the instincts. Day 2 on Isla Vela, the confrontation day. I woke up early, kissed Jessica's forehead, and told her I'd signed up for a snorkeling trip with some other resort guests. "That sounds fun," she said sleepily. "I might explore the local market today, maybe buy some souvenirs." "Take your time. I'll be gone most of the day." She smiled, the same smile she'd been giving me for 12 years, and I walked out without looking back. I didn't go snorkeling. Instead, I hiked up a trail on the island's eastern edge, one that overlooked a cluster of abandoned fishing shacks I'd spotted on a map. The rain had started around noon, light at first, but building to a steady downpour by early afternoon. At 1:47 p.m., I watched Jessica leave the resort on foot, heading away from the market district. I followed. She moved with purpose through the muddy paths, and I stayed 50 yards back, using the rain and dense vegetation as cover. My phone was in a waterproof case, fully charged, recording mode ready. The walk took nearly an hour. By the time she reached the shacks, we were both soaked through. I found a position behind a collapsed wall, close enough to see the particular shack she entered but hidden from view. At 2:23 p.m., Rafael Vega arrived via a hidden beach path. He was taller than I'd expected from his photos. Broad-shouldered, with the kind of weathered handsomeness that probably looked good on a boat at sunset. He checked over his shoulder before slipping inside. I waited 5 minutes. Then I moved to the crack in the wall. What I saw didn't surprise me. It still hurt. Somewhere deep beneath the ice I'd built around my heart. But it didn't surprise me. Jessica and Raphael, tangled together in the dim kerosene light, their bodies moving with the ease of long familiarity. I recorded for 3 minutes. That was enough. Then I kicked down the rotting door. The look on their faces would have been funny under different circumstances. Jessica screamed. Raphael scrambled backward, pants around his ankles. I stood in the doorway, rain streaming off me, phone held steady. "Derek!" Jessica's voice cracked. "Derek, this isn't—" "Don't." I kept my voice flat, controlled. "Don't insult my intelligence." Raphael found his feet, hiked up his pants with shaking hands. His eyes were wild, calculating, trying to figure out if I was armed or just angry. "You need to leave, friend." "I'm not your friend, and I'm not leaving." "This is none of your business. My wife is my business. Or didn't she mention she was married when she was in your bed?" Raphael's jaw tightened. He was bigger than me, broader through the shoulders, with the kind of working man strength that comes from hauling nets and wrestling with the sea. If this turned physical, I wasn't sure I could take him. But I wasn't planning on getting physical. I raised my phone, turned the screen toward them so they could see themselves. The video was crystal clear despite the low light. Bodies intertwined, faces visible, no ambiguity whatsoever. "I have 18 months of text messages," I said calmly. "I have the property documents, the Vela beachfront place you two were planning to buy together. I have bank records showing my wife transferred $47,000 to a hidden account. I have 12,000 more showing she sent money directly to you." I looked at Raphael. "Did you think no one would notice? Or did you just not care?" Raphael's expression shifted from fear to calculation. "She told me the marriage was over, that you were separated." "Did she? That's interesting. Because we've been sleeping in the same bed for 2 years. Derek, please." Jessica had pulled on her dress, was clutching it closed over her chest. Her hair was wet from more than just the rain, and there were marks on her neck that made my stomach turn. "Derek, please. We can talk about this. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger wearing my wife's face. "You've been planning this for 2 years. The hidden accounts, the property deal, the insurance policy discussions." Jessica's face went pale. "What insurance policy discussions? What if something happened to him on the island? The currents there are dangerous." I watched her flinch. "Sound familiar?" "That was a joke. Funny joke." I turned back to Raphael. "Here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to call the resort. Then I'm going to call the local police. Then I'm going to walk out of here and fly home tomorrow. Alone. And when I get there, I'm going to file for divorce and enforce the prenuptial agreement that my wife helped write." I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. The one that says adultery triggers a 70-30 split in favor of the wronged party. Raphael's eyes narrowed. "You're not going anywhere with that phone." "Raphael, don't—" Jessica started. But he was already moving. That's when Raphael lunged. I'd been expecting it. Hadn't even realized I'd been expecting it until his shoulder was driving toward my midsection, trying to tackle me and grab the phone. But I'd spent 3 weeks learning how to handle exactly this kind of situation. I sidestepped, redirected his momentum, watched as he crashed into the shack's support beam with a sound like a bag of wet cement hitting concrete. The roof groaned, shifted, and then a section collapsed, pinning Raphael's leg under debris. He screamed. Jessica screamed louder. I stood there and kept recording. "I'd stay still if I were you," I said to Raphael. "Moving might shift more weight onto that leg." "You did this!" Jessica was crying now, mascara running. "You attacked him!" "The video shows differently. He lunged at me. I stepped aside. The building did the rest." I pulled out a second phone, a prepaid I'd bought specifically for this trip, and dialed the resort. "This is Derek Lawson in room 204. There's been an accident at the old fishing shacks on the Eastern Trail. 1 person injured. We need medical assistance. I gave directions, ended the call, and turned back to my wife. Your attorney can contact mine, I said. His name is Brian Hartwell. I'll leave his card at the front desk. Derek, please. We're done talking, Jessica. We've been done for 2 years. You just didn't know I knew. I walked out into the rain and waited for help to arrive. The local police were more interested in Raphael's broken ankle than in our domestic situation. I showed them the video, all of it, from Jessica entering the shack to Raphael lunging at me, and their expressions went from skeptical to bored. Looks like he fell, the senior officer said. You didn't touch him? Not once, as you can see. Marital dispute? Divorce pending. I'm an American citizen, so is my wife. We'll be handling legal matters stateside. He nodded, made some notes, and that was that. Raphael was taken to the island's small clinic. Jessica was escorted back to the resort. I walked into the Palomar's lobby, dripping on the tile floor, and found Elena Reyes, the manager, waiting for me. Mr. Lawson. Her face was a masterclass in professional mortification. I am so sorry. We had no idea. Not your fault. Please allow me to offer a full refund and an upgrade to the presidential suite for your remaining days. I'll take the refund, but I won't be needing the suite. I glanced toward the staircase. I'll be leaving tomorrow, alone. My wife will be leaving tonight. Elena's eyebrows rose, but she didn't argue. I'll have her bags brought to the lobby. 1 hour should be enough time. Jessica was in our room when I arrived, sitting on the bed with her wet dress still clinging to her. She looked up when I walked in, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved, the woman who'd given me Lily. Then she opened her mouth and the illusion shattered. Derek, you have to listen to me. It's not as simple as you think. Raphael and we have a connection. Save it for your attorney. It just happened. I didn't plan for any of this. He was a client, and we started talking, and one thing led to another. For 2 years. One thing led to another for 2 years. I walked to the closet, pulled out her suitcase. Pack. You can't just throw away 12 years of marriage. I turned to face her, and whatever she saw in my expression made her take a step back. I'm not throwing it away. You did. 2 years ago, when you decided our vows meant nothing. We can work through this. Couples survive affairs all the time. We have a daughter. Don't. My voice went hard. Don't you dare use Lily as a bargaining chip. You've missed half her school events in the past year. You've been distracted at every dinner. You left her with the nanny while you went to Miami to be with him. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the text messages. You want to explain this one? Counting down the days until I don't have to pretend anymore. Jessica's face went pale. Or how about this one? I scrolled further. What if something happened to him on the island? The currents there are dangerous. That was a joke? Funny joke. Here's another one. I changed my will 3 weeks ago. If anything happens to me, you get nothing. Everything goes to Lily in a trust managed by my brother. And I've already filed copies of these messages with my insurance company's fraud division. I smiled without warmth. So if you were planning something more permanent than divorce, you might want to reconsider. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me. That ship had sailed. Fear of consequences. Fear of what I could do to her. I would never. Derek, you have to believe me. I would never. I don't have to believe anything you say ever again. That's the whole point. What am I supposed to do? Pack your things. You have 1 hour. There's a ferry at 7. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Miami, Tampa, your parents' house, Raphael's boat. I threw the suitcase onto the bed. Anywhere but here. Derek, please. 58 minutes. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You're not the man I married. No, I agreed. I'm the man you made me. Now pack. I watched her ferry disappear into the storm-churned sea from my balcony. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and humid. I sipped a rum punch I didn't taste and felt absolutely nothing. That's when Carlos appeared beside me. "Heard about the excitement," he said. "You okay?" "Better than I've been in 2 years." He nodded, leaned against the railing. "I made some calls. Old contacts on the mainland. Your friend Rafael Vega has outstanding warrants. Tax evasion. Failure to appear in court. Thought you might want to know." I turned to look at him. "That's interesting, isn't it? U.S. Customs and Border Protection would probably be interested too, if someone were to make an anonymous tip." I pulled out my phone. "I might know someone." Carlos smiled for the first time since I'd met him. "Have a good trip home, Mr. Lawson. Call me Derek." "Derek," he shook my hand. "Good luck." I spent my last day on Isla Vela walking the island, recording voice memos with dates and times and evidence summaries. I visited the local police station and obtained a written incident report. I sat on the beach and let the Caribbean sun bake the tension out of my shoulders, and I called Lily. "Daddy!" Her voice was pure sunshine through the phone. "Are you having fun? Is Mommy there? Can I talk to her?" I closed my eyes. "Mommy had to come home early, sweetheart. Work emergency. But I'll be back tomorrow, okay?" "Okay, I miss you." "I miss you too, baby girl. More than you know." I stayed on the beach until sunset, then walked back to the resort and slept better than I had in years. Tampa felt different when I landed. Not the humidity or the traffic or the palm trees. Those were all the same. But I was different. 12 years of marriage stripped away in 48 hours, and somehow I felt lighter for it. Brian met me at the airport. "How bad?" he asked as we walked to his car. "I've got everything. Video, messages, financial records, the property documents. She can't spin this." "What about the boyfriend?" "Broken ankle and probably an arrest warrant waiting when he gets back to Miami." I smiled. "Anonymous tip to CBP," Brian laughed. "Remind me never to make you angry." Too late for Jessica to learn that lesson. The locks on our house had been changed while I was gone. Brian's paralegal handled it. And a laminated note on the door directed Jessica to contact my attorney for access to retrieve her belongings. She showed up 2 hours after I got home, mascara-streaked and furious. "You locked me out of my own house." I watched her from the living room window. "The locks will be open during scheduled times for you to retrieve personal items. Brian's office will coordinate." "This is insane. You can't just—" "I can, and I have." I let the curtain fall. "Your attorney can contact mine." She pounded on the door for another 10 minutes before giving up. I heard her car peel out of the driveway and then silence. Beautiful silence. The next morning, I filed for divorce. Florida being a no-fault state, the grounds were irreconcilable differences. But Brian simultaneously filed a motion to enforce the prenuptial agreement based on proven adultery, and the evidence package we submitted was devastating. 27 pages of text messages, bank records, GPS logs, property documents, and the video. Jessica's attorney, Victoria Stone, high-profile and expensive, immediately filed motions to suppress, claiming I'd obtained evidence illegally. Brian's response was surgical. GPS trackers on marital vehicles were legal in Florida. The phone was photographed in our shared home. The video was taken in an abandoned structure with no reasonable expectation of privacy. Every piece of evidence had been gathered within the bounds of the law. The motions to suppress were denied. Custody was where Jessica tried to fight hardest. "She's going to argue you're using Lily as a weapon," Brian warned me. "That you're poisoning your daughter against her mother." "I'm not saying anything to Lily except the truth. Age appropriate, but the truth." "Which is?" That mommy made choices that hurt our family. That none of this is Lily's fault. That I love her no matter what. Brian nodded slowly. And if Lily asks about the affair? She already knows something was wrong. Kids aren't stupid. I leaned back in my chair. I'm not going to lie to my daughter, Brian. She deserves better than that. Telling Lily was the hardest thing I've ever done. I sat her down in the living room, the same room where we'd had family movie nights and Christmas mornings and lazy Sunday breakfasts. She looked at me with those two old eyes, and I knew she'd already figured out most of it. Your mom and I are getting divorced, I said. Do you know what that means? It means you're not married anymore. Her voice was small but steady. It means she's not going to live here. That's right. Is it because of the man on her secret phone? I blinked. How did you know about that? Lily looked down at her hands. I saw her texting once. She had this phone I'd never seen before, and she was smiling at it weird. Like, she struggled for words. Like she wasn't here even though she was sitting right next to me. My heart broke a little more. Yeah, baby, that's part of it. Is she going to come back? She'll still be your mom. You'll still see her. We're going to figure out a schedule so you can spend time with both of us. I pulled her into my lap, held her tight. But I want you to know something. None of this is your fault. Not one single bit of it. Do you understand? She nodded against my chest. Daddy? Yeah? I want to stay with you. I closed my eyes. We'll figure it out, sweetheart. I promise. 2 weeks after filing, the social fallout hit Jessica like a freight train. I didn't tell anyone about the affair. I didn't have to. Word spreads in social circles like ours. Country club memberships, PTA committees, book clubs with expensive wine. Someone at Jessica's firm talked. Someone else at the firm heard. And soon everyone knew. Her country club friends grew distant. Her book club stopped inviting her. The PTA moms whispered behind their hands whenever she appeared at school events. I ran into her mother Patricia at the grocery store 3 weeks after I got back from the island. She was in the produce section, picking through avocados, and when she saw me, her face crumpled. Derek. She set down her shopping basket. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Patricia. I had no idea. William and I, we had no idea. Her eyes were wet. She's our daughter, but what she did? I know. We raised her better than this. I don't understand how... She broke off, pressed a hand to her mouth. How is Lily? She's handling it. She's strong. Can we still see her? Please, Derek, she's our granddaughter. Of course. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's just about the truth. Patricia nodded, wiped her eyes. William wants to call you. He's so angry. At Jessica. He doesn't know what to say. Tell him he doesn't have to say anything. We're okay. I left her standing there among the avocados, looking 10 years older than she had the last time I'd seen her. Collateral damage. One of the things Jessica hadn't thought about when she started this. Jessica's law firm, citing potential reputational concerns, placed her on administrative leave pending the divorce resolution. Her income dropped to zero overnight. She called me 17 times in 3 days. I answered none of them. On the 18th call, I picked up. What do you want, Jessica? Derek. Oh God, Derek, please. What do you want? I need access to the joint accounts. I can't pay my hotel bill. I can't buy food. You've frozen everything. My attorney advised against releasing funds pending the divorce. You can take that up with him. This is cruel. You're being cruel. Am I? You stole $47,000 from our family over 18 months. You spent our money on property with your boyfriend. And now you want access to more? I laughed without humor. Call your parents. They're barely speaking to me. Then call Raphael. Silence. Then, quietly. He's not returning my calls either. Imagine that. I hung up and blocked her number. From then on, everything went through Brian. The discovery process was where Jessica's case fell apart completely. Brian's subpoenas unearthed something I hadn't known. Jessica had been formally disciplined by her firm 8 months earlier for inappropriate client relations with Rafael Vega. The firm had buried the warning to avoid scandal, but now it was evidence of a pattern. We also found bank records showing Jessica had transferred $12,000 directly to Rafael over the past 2 years. Not into a joint account. Not as loans, direct transfers to her lover's personal account while married to me. Financial infidelity compounded. The judge's expression when that evidence was presented told me everything I needed to know about how this was going to end. The only time I came close to losing my composure was 3 weeks after filing. I received an anonymous email, no sender address, routed through a dozen servers, containing photos of Jessica and Rafael at a Miami hotel. The timestamps showed they were taken 6 months earlier. 6 months earlier was when my mother died. Jessica had claimed she couldn't attend the funeral. "Emergency deposition," she'd said. "I'm so sorry, Derek. I'll be there in spirit." She hadn't been at a deposition. She'd been in a hotel room with her boyfriend while I stood at my mother's grave, holding Lily's hand, wondering why my wife couldn't be there for me. I sat at my desk and stared at those photos for a long time. The anger I'd buried under layers of strategic calculation came roaring back, white-hot and vicious. Then I saved the photos, forwarded them to Brian, and went for a 5-mile run until I couldn't feel anything except my own heartbeat. The settlement negotiations were brutal. Jessica, through Victoria Stone, offered a deal. She'd sign away primary custody and accept minimal assets if I agreed to a non-disclosure agreement preventing me from sharing the affair evidence. "She wants to buy your silence," Brian explained. "Keep the story from spreading further." I thought about it. I really did. An NDA would mean Lily would never stumble across the details when she was older. It would mean Jessica could rebuild her reputation eventually. It would mean this whole nightmare could stay private. "What's your advice?" I asked. "Legally, the NDA would be enforceable. You'd get everything you want in exchange for keeping quiet." "And personally?" Brian leaned back. "Personally, I've seen a lot of divorces, and the ones where people buy their way out of consequences, they don't really end. The wronged party spends years feeling like something was taken from them, like justice never happened. You think I need justice? I think you need to look in the mirror 10 years from now and know you did the right thing, whatever that means to you." I thought about Jessica's face at the shack, about the text messages, about my mother's funeral, which she'd skipped to be with her lover. "No," I said. "No NDA." "You're sure?" "She doesn't get to buy silence. She gets consequences." The final settlement hearing was almost anticlimactic. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lighting, the kind of institutional space that made life-altering decisions feel bureaucratic. Jessica sat at the opposite table, Victoria Stone at her side, looking thinner than I remembered. Hollow. The judge reviewed the prenuptial agreement and deemed it enforceable. The adultery clause was triggered. Jessica's share of marital assets dropped to 30%. "Your Honor," Victoria Stone tried one last time, "my client maintains that the evidence was obtained through—" "We've addressed this, counselor, multiple times. The motions to suppress were denied. The evidence stands." I was awarded the family home. Jessica had 60 days to retrieve belongings under supervision. Primary custody went to me after a guardian ad litem interviewed Lily and recommended stability with her father. Jessica got every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. The insurance policy messages were entered into evidence as a concerning pattern, though Jessica's attorney argued they were dark humor between adults. The judge didn't look convinced. The court ordered her to repay the $47,000 she'd siphoned into her hidden account. Combined with the prenup penalties, she walked away from 12 years of marriage with almost nothing. I watched her leave the courtroom, Victoria Stone's hand on her arm. She glanced back once, just once, and our eyes met. I looked for something in her face. Remorse. Anger. Anything. But there was nothing there. Just emptiness. She'd gambled everything on a fisherman and a Caribbean dream, and she'd lost. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. Something. Instead, I felt nothing at all. That's how I knew it was over. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. The house had been redecorated. Lily picked the colors, a mixture of soft blues and greens that made the place feel like somewhere new, and felt like home for the first time in years. I'd taken up sailing, bought a 32-foot boat I named Second Wind, and spent every Sunday on the water with my daughter. Work was good. Colleagues had heard rumors about my divorce but didn't pry. I handled cases with the same methodical patience I always had, and if I was a little more skeptical of people's stated intentions now, well, that probably made me better at my job. And there was Emma. Emma Brooks was a data analyst in our IT department. 35, divorced herself, no drama, and a laugh that made something warm unfold in my chest. We'd started with coffee in the break room, awkward small talk about spreadsheets and weather, then lunch at the sandwich place across the street. Then dinner at a quiet restaurant where she told me about her own marriage falling apart. No affair, just two people who'd grown in different directions. "You're different than I expected," she said one night, sitting across from me at a corner table in South Tampa. The candle between us cast soft shadows across her face. "Everyone at work says you're cold, calculating. I can be. But you're not. Not really." She tilted her head, studying me with those perceptive brown eyes. "You're careful. There's a difference. I've learned to be careful." "Because of your ex?" "Because of a lot of things." I reached across the table, took her hand. Her fingers were warm, and they curled around mine without hesitation. "But I'm trying to be less careful with you," she smiled. "I can work with that. I need you to know something. I'm not good at this anymore. Opening up, trusting. I thought I knew someone for 12 years and I was wrong. So if I'm slow or guarded or... Derek." She squeezed my hand. "I'm not asking for guarantees. I'm asking for honesty. Can you give me that?" I looked at her face, open and honest. No hidden agendas, no secret phones, no elaborate lies. A woman who asked for what she wanted and didn't play games. "Yeah," I said. "I can give you that." Jessica's life, by contrast, had contracted into something small and bitter. Her law license was suspended for 6 months after her firm's disciplinary report became part of the bar's review. She'd taken a job as a paralegal at a small firm in Ocala, making a quarter of what she used to earn. Her parents helped with rent, but I heard through mutual friends that the relationship was strained. Rafael Vega had been arrested by CBP agents when he docked in Miami 6 weeks after the island incident. His outstanding warrants, combined with new tax evasion charges, earned him 18 months in federal prison. Jessica never visited him. Their Isla Vela property dream died in a holding cell. She'd started dating again, a man named Greg something, an insurance adjuster she'd met at some kind of support group. I heard she was engaged. I felt nothing about it. Not anger, not satisfaction, just a blank space where my feelings for her used to live. That's how I knew I'd healed. Lily adjusted better than I'd feared. Therapy helped. I'd insisted on it from the beginning, and she had her father's methodical approach to processing difficult emotions. She still saw her mother every other weekend, though the visits were often awkward and Jessica canceled more than she kept. "Mom's different now," Lily told me one evening, curled up on the couch with a book. "Different how?" "Smaller, like she's trying to take up less space." She looked up at me. I feel bad for her sometimes. Is that wrong? No, sweetheart. That's just being human. I still want to live with you, though. I know, and you are. That's not changing. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her book. I watched her for a moment. My daughter, my anchor, the only good thing to come out of 12 years with a woman who'd never deserved either of us, and felt something that might have been peace. A year after the island, I went back. Alone this time. I told Emma I needed closure, and she understood without needing details. Take the time you need, she said, kissing me goodbye at the airport. I'll be here when you get back. I booked the same room at the Palomar, walked the same paths, sat on the same beach. The rainy season was in full swing again, and the resort was nearly empty. Same story, different year. Elena Reyes was still the manager. She recognized me immediately. Mr. Lawson. Her smile was cautious. It's good to see you again. Good to be back. She hesitated. Will anyone else be joining you? No, just me this time. She nodded, understanding more than I'd said. Your usual room is available if you'd like. I would, thank you. On my second day, I hiked out to the shacks. They were gone, collapsed completely from storm damage, just a pile of rotting timber and rusted nails. The kerosene lamp I'd seen through the crack was nowhere to be found. Vegetation had already started reclaiming the clearing, green vines snaking through the debris. I stood where the door used to be, rain starting to fall, and let myself feel everything I'd suppressed for 12 months. The anger, the betrayal, the grief for a marriage I'd thought was real. The fear of that moment when I'd read those messages about insurance policies and accidents. The cold determination that had carried me through 7 weeks of investigation and 6 months of legal warfare. All of it, pouring out of me like the rain pouring from the sky. I stood there for 20 minutes, getting soaked to the bone, and when I finally turned away, I left something behind in that clearing. I'm not sure what to call it. The version of myself that had been wounded. The part that had learned to transform pain into strategy. Then I walked back to the resort, ordered a rum cocktail at the bar, and watched the sunset. Carlos found me there. Thought you might come back, he said, sliding onto the stool next to mine. He looked older than I remembered. A year had added some gray to his temples, but his eyes were still sharp, still cop eyes. Had to see it one more time. And? Did you find what you were looking for? I considered the question. I found peace, I think, or something close to it. That's more than most people get. He ordered his own drink, the same cheap beer I remembered from last year. What happens now? Now I go home, I sail my boat, I raise my daughter. I marry a woman who doesn't lie to me. I smiled for the first time all trip. Now I live. Good for you. He raised his beer. Here's to living. We clinked glasses and drank in companionable silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon. You know, Carlos said after a while, I've been doing this job, police, security, whatever you want to call it, for 30 years. And the one thing I've learned is that most people never get justice, not real justice. They get settlements and compromises and irreconcilable differences. They get divorce papers that don't mention what really happened. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to put things in perspective. What you did, building that case, gathering that evidence, protecting yourself and your daughter, that was smart. That was right. Most people just react. They scream. They break things. They make decisions they can't take back. He looked at me. You didn't. I wanted to. There were moments. But you didn't. That's what matters. I finished my drink, set the glass down. Thanks for your help last year. I never properly thanked you. You thanked me by surviving. He smiled. Go home, Derek. Go live your life. That's the only thanks I need. The lawsuit notice arrived in a manila envelope that shouldn't have bothered me, but did. 6 months after that, Rafael Vega's attorney sent me a letter. The prison had released him early for good behavior, and now he was suing me for intentional infliction of emotional distress and assault related to the shack incident. The letter demanded $50,000 or threatened a civil trial. I showed it to Brian, who laughed so hard he nearly choked on his coffee. "This is frivolous," he said, wiping his eyes. "The video evidence alone tanks his case. He lunged first. You never touched him." "So we fight it?" "We file for dismissal. I'll have it thrown out in a week." He was right. The suit was dismissed before it ever reached a courtroom. I didn't even have to testify. I sent Rafael's attorney a single-line email. "Nice try. Goodbye." Then I closed my laptop, walked down to the dock where Second Wind was waiting, and took her out on the water. The bay was calm that afternoon, the sky a perfect cloudless blue. And as I sailed past the marina where I'd first started investigating Rafael Vega 2.5 years earlier, I realized I hadn't thought about him in months. Some people become the center of your story. Others are just obstacles you navigate around. Rafael had been an obstacle, nothing more. Then I went sailing. 2 years after I watched my marriage die through a crack in a wooden wall, I stood on the deck of Second Wind in a suit and tie, watching Emma walk toward me across the dock. She was beautiful in white, simple dress, no veil, wildflowers in her hair that Lily had picked from a field that morning. The Tampa Bay sun was warm on my face, the water gently lapping against the hull, and for the first time in years I felt completely at peace. Lily stood beside me as my best woman, grinning like she'd won the lottery. "She looks pretty, Dad," she whispered. "She does." "You look happy." "I am, sweetheart. I really am." A handful of friends and family sat in folding chairs on the pier. Brian was there, looking smug about having introduced us at a company function. Megan was filming on her phone, probably already planning how to work this into a podcast episode. Tyler stood at the back, arms crossed, nodding his approval. Emma reached me, took my hands in hers. Her eyes were bright, her smile genuine. "You ready for this?" "I've been ready for a long time." "Any regrets?" I looked at her face, open and honest, no hidden agendas, no secret phones, no elaborate lies. A woman who loved me for who I was, not what I could give her. A woman who'd seen my scars and decided to stay anyway. "Not one," I said. We were halfway through our vows when the storm rolled in. I saw it building on the western horizon. Purple clouds, distant thunder, the kind of weather that would have sent most people running for cover. Lily tugged my sleeve. "Dad, should we go inside?" I looked at Emma. She looked at the sky. Then she looked back at me and shrugged. "We've weathered worse," I said. "Let's see what this one's got." The officiant sped through the rest of the ceremony, and we were pronounced married just as the first fat raindrops started to fall. Everyone scrambled for the boat's cabin, laughing and soaked within seconds. I stood on deck a moment longer, letting the rain wash over me, watching the storm break across Tampa Bay. "Derek," Emma called from the cabin. "Get in here, you lunatic." I smiled, turned toward her voice, and went inside. The storm passed 20 minutes later. By the time we motored into the harbor, the sky was clearing, streaked with gold and pink from the setting sun. It always clears eventually. You just have to be willing to weather it first.